The All-Star Game is just one opener after the other. As the All-Star Game starter is an interesting concept. And of course, with Paul Skenes being named to the team and him being all the rage this summer in Major League Baseball, the conversation, should he start? Would it be the right thing for the game to do? I think some of this is a little bit overblown. I think the fact that he will be there is already both deserved and doing most of the job, right? I don't think if he doesn't start the All-Star Game, people are going to forget that he exists and or not watch the next time he starts. However, we do have to acknowledge, even though we are watching, every Paul Skenes start, no matter when it is, this is an opportunity to showcase him. It is an opportunity to showcase some players that some people don't necessarily get to see all the time or are willing to watch all the time. So where do you? Let's start with the Skenes thing, and then let's get to the bigger, who should start beyond him or in the American League.
I'd like to start even further back, Jordan, at the Big Bang, the beginning of time.
Okay, sure, yeah.
I think discussing who should start the All-Star Game this year gets to the very foundation of the point of the All-Star Game itself. And I think it's important to understand why we even have an All-Star Game to begin with. Back in the day, before there was MLB TV and TikTok and Riz, there was radio and there was going to the yard. Right? That was it. And so if you lived in a city with just an American League team or just a National League team, you never got to see the best players in the other league. So, if you lived in, for instance, Cincinnati, Ted Williams was something that showed up in newspapers and on the radio and the World Series if you were lucky, right? Mm-hmm. And over time with interleague and TV and now MLB TV, where you can just sit here in New York City where I am and watch Shohei Ohtani in Los Angeles whenever I want. The All-Star Game kind of takes on a different purpose. It's no longer about fans getting a glimpse of all of these players, right? It's about people who maybe aren't fans getting a very abbreviated taste of what the baseball season has been to this point and what it may be for the rest of the year. Now, I don't think that necessarily points to and then it has to be Skenes or, then it has to be Chris Sale. Sure. I think it is a really interesting conversation about the point of the game itself and why it exists. I think the important thing to get out of the way, friend of the show and colleague of ours, Russ Dorsey, I believe, was on MLB Network yesterday and had a point about how I think he was insinuating that Skenes shouldn't be an all-star. And I disagree with that. I think he has been more than good enough in the relatively short amount of time that he should be an all-star. I think it's fair to push back against the idea of him being a starter. But where do you kind of land on all this?
Yeah, I think that, again, it's the combination of, okay, this is a chance where a lot of people are watching and people that haven't necessarily watched him yet can be like, oh, this is now someone I want to follow more, combined with even though it is obviously, I don't know what artificial, he would face 3 of the best hitters in the world, right, to start the game. And that in and of itself is a fun thing, right? Those individual matchups, even in games that don't count, that is also one of the beauties of the MLB All-Star Game, is that even though it doesn't matter, you can't half-ass it, right? This is the one thing. We don't even really like the All-Star Game that much, but Paul Skenes, if he starts the game or whatever he comes in, if he pitches, which it seems like with his schedule he probably will just because of when he's starting next, which I think is tomorrow, he's not going to go up there throwing 90 miles an hour, right?
And this is why baseball has the best All-Star Game. Still, even. Yeah. Because in football and basketball and hockey, when you watch it, everyone's playing at 85%. And it's just, if that, right? And it's just a bizarre disconnect in reality. Yeah. The pitchers are throwing as hard as they can.
Yeah. Right. Or at least it is a reflective of what they are capable of. And I think that is something that we will never, even if the game and the result doesn't matter, the hitters, like there's more injury risk if they are not trying, like that's the thing. Like they have to go out there and do their best. Now, that said, the when you expand this to just like what an all-star starter is, it's funny, right? Because we are talking about likely one inning. Something that I will probably bring back on Friday, I just reminded myself that you can do stat head searches on Baseball Reference for all-star games. And so, which I'm just going to tease that because I have more on that coming on Friday. But just for this purpose, I was like, okay, what's the most innings ever thrown in an all-star game? Right? Because obviously now it's 2 innings max. I'm looking at recently the most innings anyone's thrown in the last like 10 years is 2. And that was Corbin Burns in 2021. And he wasn't even the starter.
The bulk guy. He was the bulk guy.
He was the bulk guy to get it from the second to the third inning, and he allowed 2 runs. Right, he allowed a homer in that outing. So, but otherwise, obviously, nobody is throwing more than 2 or 3 innings. So, it is just the kind of that opportunity to who can show off in 1 inning, and Paul Skenes in that sense is a great answer for that. Like, regardless of the season, like just if you're just saying, who could entertain me the most over the course of 1 inning? Just based on the stuff, forget the stats, like he's one of the first picks. I don't think you can deny that.
I would say my other pick would be the opposite of Paul Skenes. It would be like Kyle Hendricks, who's not an all-star. Be like, you're throwing 88.
Very much not an all-star this year.
And you've been getting crushed. Yeah. Let's just put you up there against Judge and Soto and just throw you to the wolves and see what happens.
Well, let's expand it then. I mean, who should, besides Skenes, are there any guys that others stand out or,
One other thing I want to do. So just for context, last year it was Garrett Cole for the AL, Zach Gallen for the NL, Shane McClanahan and Kershaw in 22, Ohtani and Scherzer in 21, and then Chris Sale, who's in the mix to start for the NL this year after just an incredible bounce back season so far. He started in 16, 17, and 18, and as far as we can tell, is one of a handful of pitchers who have started 3 in a row.
Yeah.
So he's been there and he's done this. The argument for Paul Skenes is this, right? He is the most compelling and exhilarating pitcher on the planet. He brings in eyeballs that other guys other than Ohtani don't bring. Right now, there is legitimate excitement around him as far as pitchers are concerned. He has been sensational in the limited amount of time he's been in the big leagues. If he had been in the big leagues from opening day to now, it would, in my opinion, not even be a question if he was putting up these numbers. Now, the argument against him is that he's made 10 starts, right? A lot of bad pitchers, which he is not, to be clear, he's good, I understand. A lot of bad pitchers have made 10 good starts in a row, all right? A lot of mediocre pitchers have made 10 good starts in a row. Just for context, not to say that Trevor Williams is a good pitcher or a bad pitcher or a mediocre pitcher. He and Paul Skenes have the exact same F4 right now in a very similar amount of innings. And I don't think there's anybody who's like, let Trevor Williams start the All-Star game.
Sure.
But it's 10 starts, right? And I think people are like wary of rewarding 10 starts. He has a 2.12 ERA in those 10 starts, but it's like, is this a deserved honor for someone who's only been in the big leagues for a short amount of time? When you compare that to someone like Chris Sale, who has, the epitome of tenure, that's why people wouldn't want to give it to Paul Skenes.